All right, get ready for another deep dive. You know we like to go deep on all sorts of internet drama. And today we're talking about Ethan Ralph again. This guy, man.
She just keeps giving us material.
Seriously, every time you think he's hit rock bottom, he just finds a new lower level. Like, how is that even possible?
It's honestly impressive in a way. The guy is like a masterclass in self-sabotage.
So, where do we even begin with this one? I guess the most recent thing is this whole arrest warrant situation.
Yeah, that's a new development. Seems like he's in some hot water over in Stearns County, Minnesota.
You know what they say? You can run, but you can't hide.
Especially not when you're Ethan Ralph.
Right. The guy just can't help but attract attention.
So, for those who haven't been following along, Ralph seems to have gotten himself into trouble for streaming Aaron M. Holt's court hearing.
Oh, yeah, I vaguely remember that. Wasn't that a whole thing?
It was. And for obvious reasons, recording court proceedings is generally a no-no.
Yeah, pretty sure there are rules against that kind of thing.
There are, and Ralph just decided to ignore them.
Classic Ralph.
And of course, the internet being the internet, there are recordings of the stream floating around.
Because of course there are. But didn't he try to delete the stream from Rumble?
He did, but, you know, once something's on the internet, it's kind of hard to make it disappear completely.
Yeah, the internet never forgets. Especially when it comes to stuff like this.
Exactly. And now he has this warrant hanging over his head.
Talk about adding insult to injury. I mean, this guy can't seem to catch a break.
Well, he kind of brings it on himself, doesn't he?
He does. But, you know what else happened recently? The chair incident.
Ah, yes, the chair. Another classic in the Ethan Ralph saga.
Seriously, the guy just can't stay in his seat.
It's almost like a running gag at this point.
It is. Like every time he streams, you're just waiting for the inevitable moment when he goes tumbling down.
And this time was no exception.
No, it wasn't. And it was glorious.
Oh, absolutely. It was like something out of a slapstick comedy routine.
I mean, picture this. Ralph, mid-rant, all red-faced and sweaty, and suddenly, boom, he's gone. Just a pile of empty monster cans and a cloud of dust where he used to be.
And the music. Don't forget about the dramatic music playing in the background.
Oh, yeah. That just added to the whole absurdity of it all. It was perfect.
And, of course, the Kiwi Farms community had a field day with it.
Oh, I bet they did. They must have been in meme heaven.
They were! The memes, the jokes, the sheer glee at Ralph's misfortune.
It was beautiful.
It really was. You gotta hand it to those guys. They know how to milk a situation for all it's worth.
They do. But, you know, beyond the humor, there's something kind of sad about it all, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, this is a guy who's clearly struggling, and the whole world is watching him fall apart.
It's like a train wreck in slow motion. You know it's going to be bad, but you just can't look away.
Exactly. And in a way, I think that's what keeps people coming back for more. It's this morbid fascination with watching someone self-destruct.
It's messed up, but I get it. There's something strangely compelling about it all.
There is. But anyway, let's get back to the warrant. What are we thinking here? What are the actual charges?
Yeah, is this something he can just brush off? Or is this going to be a real problem for him?
Well, let's dig into that, shall we? From what we've gathered from various sources, it seems like the warrant is for contempt of court.
Contempt of court. So, like he disrespected the court or something.
Pretty much. And that's usually a misdemeanor offense.
A misdemeanor. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's done some pretty shady stuff over the years. You'd think he'd be facing something a little more serious by now.
Well, it all depends on the specific circumstances and the judge's discretion. But even a misdemeanor can have consequences, especially for someone like Ralph, who already has a bit of a track record with the law.
Oh yeah, he's had his fair share of run-ins with the authorities. From assault charges to restraining orders, the guy's got a rap sheet.
Exactly. So this warrant just adds another layer to his already complicated legal situation.
And it raises the question, will he actually face any real repercussions this time? I mean, he's all the way out in California, and the warrant's in Minnesota. Is it even worth the effort to extradite him for a misdemeanor?
That's a good question. Extradition for misdemeanors is less common than for felonies. It often comes down to a cost-benefit analysis. Would the state of Minnesota be willing to spend the time and resources to bring Ralph back to face charges for a relatively minor offense?
It seems unlikely, especially considering his history. He's probably banking on them just letting it slide.
He might be right. But even if he avoids extradition, the warrant still hangs over his head. It limits his travel options, creates a potential legal hurdle if he ever gets pulled over or encounters law enforcement, and it adds another layer of stress to his already chaotic life.
Speaking of stress, let's not forget about the other major event that rocked Ralph's world recently, the infamous chair incident.
Ah, yes, the chair. It's almost become a symbol of Ralph's downfall, hasn't it?
It really has. Every time he topples over, it's like a visual representation of his life spiraling out of control.
And the internet, being the internet, has latched onto this symbolism with glee.
The memes, the jokes, the sheer delight in witnessing Ralph's physical comedy, it's a phenomenon in itself.
The chair incident has become a cultural touchstone for the Kiwi Farms community, a shared experience that binds them together in their collective mockery of Ralph.
It's like a ritualistic humiliation, with the chair serving as both the altar and the sacrificial offering.
And what's fascinating is how such a seemingly insignificant event, a man falling out of a chair, can become so deeply symbolic and culturally resonant.
It speaks to the power of the internet to amplify and distort reality, to transform the mundane into the absurd, and to create a shared narrative around the most unlikely of events.
And in the case of Ethan Ralph, that narrative is one of failure, self-destruction, and ultimately comedy.
But beneath the laughter, there's a darker side to this story. Ralph's chair mishaps, while entertaining on the surface, might actually be a symptom of a deeper problem.
You're referring to his alleged substance abuse issues.
Exactly. The pills, the booze, the erratic behavior, it all paints a picture of a man struggling with addiction and its consequences.
And those consequences are becoming increasingly evident. His physical health is deteriorating, his mental state is fragile, and his decision-making is impaired.
It's a vicious cycle that seems to be feeding on itself. The more he spirals, the more he relies on substances to cope, and the worse his situation becomes.
And the internet, with its constant scrutiny and relentless mockery, only exacerbates the problem.
It's like a digital echo chamber, amplifying his every mistake, every stumble, every moment of weakness.
And Ralph, trapped in this cycle of self-destruction, seems unable or unwilling to break free.
So what's the prognosis for our tragicomic hero? Is there any hope for redemption? Or is he destined to continue his downward spiral until he hits rock bottom?
Well, that's a question we'll have to explore further. But one thing's for sure, the saga of Ethan Ralph is far from over. And we'll be here to chronicle every twist and turn, every chair-related mishap, and every legal entanglement along the way.
Because in the world of online entertainment, even a train wreck can be a source of endless fascination.
And as long as Ethan Ralph keeps providing the content, the internet will keep watching, laughing, and asking, what will he do next?
We'll be back in a bit to continue our deep dive into the wild world of Ethan Ralph and all his shenanigans. Stay tuned.
So picking up where we left off, the question remains, will Ralph actually face any real consequences for his actions?
Right, because he is in California, and this warrant's all the way over in Minnesota.
Exactly. And like we were saying before the break, extradition for misdemeanors is not as straightforward as it is for felonies.
So it's kind of like a judgment call for the authorities.
Pretty much. They have to weigh the cost and effort of bringing him back to Minnesota against the severity of the offense.
And in this case, contempt of court. It doesn't really seem like something they'd go all out for.
Probably not. Especially considering his history.
Right. This guy's got a rap sheet longer than my arm.
It's true. And let's be real, Ralph's probably counting on them not bothering with it.
Yeah, he's probably thinking they won't want to waste the time and money.
Exactly. But even if he does manage to avoid extradition, this warrant still creates a whole bunch of headaches for him.
Like what?
Well, for starters, it limits his travel options. He can't exactly be jet-setting around the country with an active warrant out for his arrest.
True. Plus, there's always the risk of getting pulled over or having some kind of encounter with law enforcement.
Exactly. And that could lead to a whole lot of unwanted attention and hassle.
Not to mention the added stress and anxiety of having this legal issue hanging over his head.
Precisely. So even if he doesn't end up getting extradited, this warrant is still a major inconvenience and a potential source of problems for him.
It's like a dark cloud following him around.
Exactly.
Speaking of dark clouds, what about this whole chair incident? I mean, it's hilarious, don't get me wrong.
Oh, absolutely. It's become a classic Ethan Ralph moment.
Is there something more to it? Like, is this just a funny quirk? Or is it a sign of something deeper?
I think it's both. On the surface, it's this absurd, almost slapstick routine. A man constantly falling out of his chair. It's hard not to laugh at the sheer absurdity of it.
It is. But you have to wonder if it's a reflection of something else going on.
You mean like his alleged substance abuse issues?
Yeah. The pills, the alcohol, the erratic behavior, it all adds up to a pretty concerning picture.
It does, and those issues can definitely manifest in physical ways.
Like maybe his balance is off.
Yeah.
Or he's just not as steady on his feet as he used to be.
Exactly. And let's not forget the impact that substance abuse can have on decision-making and impulse control.
Right. It's like a vicious cycle. The more he spirals, the more he relies on those substances, and the worse the consequences become.
And the internet just amplifies it all.
It's like a digital echo chamber. Every mistake, every stumble, every moment of weakness, it's all broadcast to the world.
And that can't be easy to deal with, especially when you're already struggling with addiction and other personal issues.
It's got to be tough to have your every flaw and failure put on display for everyone to see.
It is, and I think that's part of what makes the Ethan Ralph saga so compelling. It's this strange mix of humor, tragedy, and voyeurism.
It's like we're all rubbernecking at a car crash, knowing we should look away, but drawn in by the spectacle of it all.
Exactly. And I think there's a part of us that wants to see him succeed, to overcome his demons and get his life back on track.
But there's also this morbid fascination with his downfall. Like we're waiting for the inevitable moment when it all comes crashing down.
It's a complex and unsettling dynamic.
It is. So what do you think? Is there any hope for redemption for Ethan Ralph? Or is he destined for a tragic ending?
Tough question. It really is. I mean, on one hand, you see this guy and he's clearly talented. He's got the charisma. He can be funny.
Yeah, he's got that shock jock personality that some people just can't resist.
Exactly. But then there's the other side, the self-destructive behavior, the addiction issues, the legal troubles.
It's like he's constantly battling against himself.
He is, and it's painful to watch sometimes. Like, you root for him, you want him to pull it together.
You see glimpses of potential, like maybe he can turn things around.
Yeah, but then he makes another bad decision, another impulsive move, and it's like 2 steps back.
And it all plays out so publicly for the whole world to see.
That's the thing with the internet. It's a double-edged sword. It gives you a platform and audience.
But it also magnifies your mistakes, your flaws, your vulnerabilities.
And for someone like Ethan Ralph, who's already struggling, it can be a recipe for disaster.
It's like a feedback loop. The more he messes up, the more attention he gets.
And the more attention he gets, the more pressure he feels, the more likely he is to make another mistake.
It's like he can't escape it.
And that blue check mark, that Twitter verification he fought so hard for, it's almost ironic.
Yeah, he thought it would give him legitimacy, credibility.
He thought it would elevate him above the lolcow status.
But in a way, it's just made him a bigger target.
It's like a beacon shining a spotlight on his every misstep.
And the Kiwi Farms crowd, they're always there watching, waiting for the next meltdown.
They're like vultures circling overhead, ready to pick at the bones.
It's a strange dynamic, this relationship he has with them.
It's this weird mix of fascination, mockery, and maybe even a bit of pity.
Like they can't look away even though they know it's a train wreck.
Exactly. It's this morbid curiosity, this desire to see how far he'll fall.
And he keeps giving them what they want, whether he realizes it or not.
So where does that leave us? What's the future hold for Ethan Ralph? It's hard to say.
He's a walking contradiction capable of both brilliance and self-destruction.
1 minute he's insightful, articulate. The next he's making impulsive decisions that sabotage his own success.
It's almost like he's 2 different people.
It is, and that's what makes him so fascinating, so frustrating, so utterly unpredictable.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens next.
That's the beauty of it. You never know what to expect with Ethan Ralph.
He keeps us on our toes, that's for sure.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of Ethan Ralph. It's been a roller coaster as always. Google presents Kiwi Farms is a deep well of weirdness and wonder.
And we've only just dipped our toes in.
So go check them out on YouTube.
Seriously, you won't regret it.
They're the real deal.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious, stay weird, and keep exploring.
Bye, everyone.